Welcome to Skylight Huddle. This is session 28. 28 sessions down. Well, 27 sessions down. We're about to start our 28th session here. So, today, my thought was, what if I took the polyN tracker over there? What if I took that and used that as a brain, like a centerpiece to a few synthesizers? So we kind of did this last week, but I'm kind of more focused on it now. The Neutron was hooked up last week, but this week I got the mini log in addition to that hooked up. I believe the drum machine was also hooked up last week, but the difference there is everything is now working in unison. I even toyed with the idea of bringing out the other mini log that is not the other mini log, pardon, the other Korg I have, which is a micro Korg, much like the one we play at Vibe Unit. Anyway, so that little intro riff you heard in before the stream started, that was actually being done using that stuff. I came up with that little synth wave sounding lick and just kind of put it together before the stream. Mostly I was sound checking and realized it sounds so good. I was like, man, I should start out the stream that way. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. So it looks like we got snow where I'm at today, which is pretty cool. I get to watch the snowflakes fall from the window. It's very gorgeous. So I'm going to go back to jamming a little bit. And I'm in the process of trying to figure out how to run another camera in here to get another angle. If you remember back in the early streams, probably like the first 12 sessions, we had two cameras going. But I'm having network issues. I was using NDI and some iPhones to do that, and I'm having network issues with my router. A lot of latency. Even some of the earlier streams, you might have noticed that there was some latency issues. So I think what we're going to do is resolve the network issues, like get a better network system here. I'm not an IT guy. I would sound like an idiot if I get into this, but essentially I need just a cleaner network, as it was explained to me, to be able to quickly, or to be able to have everything operate with low latency. Again, I don't know anything. I have no idea what I'm talking about. So anyway, I'm going to get back to jamming. John may be here soon, but it's no bother either way. When he shows up, we'll just incorporate him. So thanks for tuning in. Also, I'm going to use this mic. Ooh, a little bit different quality here. How does that sound? All right, that's a little better. So yeah, I got this polyend over here. It's kind of hard to see it from that camera angle, but it's right here. And I've just been programming in parts that I want to send to the synthesizers you see on the desk. I have my Neutron here on channel 1, so if I record a part, I was doing just little simple bass stuff, like this for instance. Need a little more space there, hold on. do that up to 40. I get confused on the tracker because 40 does not mean 40 steps. It means 16 times 4. Because the way things count on a tracker is 1 through F. When it gets to 9, instead of going to 10, it goes to A and continues to F before starting over. So 40 is, what would that technically be, 64 steps? So then I got the bass in there. The neutron is a great instrument for to be used as a bass. I think it sounds really good. I haven't really experimented with much other things. I heard a door shut. I might be John. False alarm. I'll be right back. All right. And since this neutron is an analog synth, it goes out of tune pretty easily. So like I have to tune it. I have no idea what pitch that even is. That's supposed to be a C. So out of tune. That's better. That's seemingly better. Let's try to record that part again. So yeah, I recorded that part, or however you say, track it. I tracked that part. I don't know. And then we go to MIDI channel 2, and now I'm controlling this synth. It's kind of cool, like a video game sound. Let's make it really short attack and really short decay. No sustain, no release. Yeah, now it's like a video game. I'll throw those drums back on. There's also parameters you can select in here. They call it CCs, and you can send it to any of the, well, not the Neutron, I'm sorry. You can send it to the Minilog XD. There's a bunch of CCs that control the knobs. And depending on like the knobs that you choose, or the CC you choose, it'll change certain parameters, and you can tell how much you want to add or remove to it. Like the cutoff, for instance, you might want to automate a cutoff or whatever. So another thing I've been experimenting with on this tracker is writing songs with a subdivision of like triplets, but then adjusting the tempo to match what the tempo actually feels like, because I realized in 6/8 when you're playing like 2/4 time, the you can play in 6/8 really fast, but make it feel like it's in 2/4 time. So the way that looks is I'll, instead of dividing up like an eighth note and treating it like it's every 2 steps on the tracker, I make it every 3 steps. And it sounds like, and yeah, add a little more length here. It's gonna be a little weird when it sends the information to the drum machine. Yeah, everything's gonna break down in terms of tempo. I just realized, because the drum machine's gonna be still anticipating a 4/4 groove at 180. Haven't solved that problem yet, but I'll show you with the mini log and the neutron what that could sound like. It's pretty cool. I think it's the most Postal Service sounding way to write. Let's just add like yeah, and then we'll do like a really fast arpeggiation like this. Actually, sorry. Let's do it more like this. Gotta keep that 6/8 feel. That sounds cool. Let's try something a little different though. Let's do it every 3 steps again. What are we at? 180? Hold on.
now we got that drum beat right. Let's try adding like that arpeggiation I was telling you about. It's a really pretty synth. See, sounds so good. Okay, and then let's copy this pattern and do the same pattern, but we'll do like a different bass. So let's see. Let's do this pattern then. All right, let's try it.
I do, but assuming you know that everything's working, I'll just trust that.
Yeah, it's working fine. We sound good.
Like, I know my mic technique is okay. So.
Yeah. So my mic technique is not okay. My mic keeps falling out of its holder here. But anyway, you were saying in FL Studio you could do MIDI, or you would change the BPM to do a different resolution for different like parts.
Yeah, so like the idea was that you would just double the tempo in the DAW itself, right? And then you would just take twice as much time like in pattern to make up the same amount of space in terms of what you were hearing. So like say if you're like main loop that you would normally just play over and over and over again, like a pretty typical thing that I would do if I was at the actual tempo for the song would be like you try to make a pattern be like, you know, one like full loop around of whatever the main pattern was. Well, when you double the tempo, now you need two of those. So it's like now you maybe can't do the whole progression in one pattern, but that's actually good because now you're doing something where like maybe the first time through you play pattern 1 and the second time through you play pattern 2. And usually the way I would start this, because I didn't want to have to write something else from scratch and I want it to feel like the one before it, you know, I'm exploiting like a limitation of the DAW at that point. So you've got it all set up like that, and what happens is the effective, I guess, the effective thing for the workflow ends up being what it makes you change. So since you're kind of like trying to avoid extra work, usually step 1 is like, oh, well, since I need 2 of these to make it up, like I'm just going to clone the pattern because that's the quickest thing to do. Copy, paste, here we go. Now it's the right length again. Well, but like since there are already now 2 different patterns, I don't have to worry about, you know, something I do that's maybe like an interesting fill or something interesting with the rhythm or a riser or something. Now it's like an easy thing to like, if I think it might make sense, I don't have to do the work of like, well, I really should divide this into multiple patterns because I don't want this to happen every time this loop plays.
Right.
And I also don't want to make yet another pattern that does nothing but the extra elements because I do want it to be married to this.
Yeah.
So it's like it kind of gets you in this workflow of like, well, every pattern I make, I'm going to have to make at least 2 of them. Most of them will probably just be clones of what they were before, but a lot of them will probably be, we'll call it an infinite loopable section and a section that's, we'll just say an end of the loop section.
Yeah.
Right? So like now you start making, say, like a verse for a rap song. Now it ends up being 3 of the loop pattern and 1 of the pattern that has the fill at the end, because that leads into the next section. You get what I'm saying? And you start doing this, that becomes like the workflow for how you build beats out, and you can get really quick at it. Like the reason I can go from like somebody be like, what if we did something that went like this, and they hum doo doo, you know, some little bullshit, and I could go from that to like a pretty banging beat in probably less than 5 minutes. How finished is it? Not very. But using those techniques, like I know whether I need to double it or not? Am I fine here or not? If not, how many patterns will it take?
Yeah.
And like I said, even if it's something you only need like 1 pattern to do, when you want those fills or those special things, you're going to end up needing to clone it and replace the whole thing for the section that leads in. So it's like you would have had to have done some of that work already. So it kind of like makes you just jump into it quicker, and it ends up saving you time later, because when you're ready to extend it out or change the structure or something, it's like, oh, well, it's one of these 2 patterns. Like it's either the loop pattern or the fill pattern. And if you really wanted to make it where you used a piece of that for something else, you could always just trim the length and use just a little section of it and swap it in a section if you really wanted to do it like that. But you know that's the one is like the basic and one has all the complexity in it, and you just decide how much of each to use.
That's so cool. Makes me want to use FL.
It's a lot of fun in that way. Like that's a way it really like gets out of the way.
Yeah.
Once you figure out that kind of a technique.
Yeah, just the other night yesterday night actually, I've been really frustrated with some things of the tracker as I've been writing on it. But then I had like a eureka moment when I started to realize that if I add, instead of counting each beat as like a quarter note, I could treat each beat like it's a dotted quarter note. And then I could like just in my head like add like a half a resolution of whatever, like I add that extra half, and then you would end up with the new tempo, and I could like mix those parts. So I was like having a blast just going through the song I was writing, and like switching from like 120 BPM, 180 BPM for a few lines, and then 60 for a few lines, and seeing how quick I could
using
change
like an
that.
actual change in tempo, or just changing the spacing of the notes?
Both.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, using the change in tempo to infer. So the game I was playing with myself basically was, can I keep a consistent quarter note and keep changing BPMs?
Oh, okay.
Do you see what I'm saying?
So you're more about like trying to figure out how to maintain the spacing regardless of tempo.
Of tempo, right?
Interesting.
And
yeah,
it's really fun.
that's good.
Because like, I mean, I've been exploring 6/8 time, and a triplet really is just a really fast 6/8 time within, some other time signature.
Yeah, it's in just an uneven ratio. It's either 3/2 or 5/4 or
Yeah.
whatever, and however you want to think
They
about it.
call it a complex time signature, or is it something else? Oh, a compound time signature, I guess.
Yeah. Well, there's the other term that's commonly used to describe that as polyrhythms.
Polyrhythm.
So a polyrhythm is like a rhythm within another rhythm.
Okay.
So like if you're like superimposing a 3 pattern over a 4, that's a polyrhythm. Whereas you're gonna find that, say, if you do a 3/4 pattern, it's like any other thing. The math always is gonna work out. In that case, the common multiple is 12. So every 12 ticks or whatever, you'll find a 1 again that they both start on.
Okay.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because you're going to need 4 patterns of 3 to get there, or 3 patterns of 4. Doesn't
Right.
matter, but every 12 they'll have a common 1 again.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's exactly right, because that's what I found.
So that's the way my brain thinks about it. It's just a really simple math problem. You just need a number that is their common multiple. Least common multiple is the mathematical term. And it works for any combination of time signatures, as far as I know.
Yeah.
I'm not like infinitely knowledgeable about that
How they
for
like
sure,
squeeze
but
in.
as far as wherever I've applied that rule has been true.
Well, it's interesting because I've always said this, but I think 6/8 is like the most versatile time signature to think in, because you can get a lot of syncopated rhythms. You can get a lot of like all those things. It feels like 2/4 at some speeds, and then it feels like 4/4 at some speeds. Like
12/8 is interesting for the same reasons, because again, the
You can
12 and
divide by the
8
12.
both have common multiples.
Yeah.
They'll have strong divisions at 4, obviously. Like you'll feel the 4 feel probably more than you'll feel the 3 feel.
So
but you can definitely lay the 3 into it and it'll work. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, so that'd be like it'd be 4 groups of 3 eighth notes, in a sense, or
Whichever way you want
however
to look
you
at
want
it.
to divide it up.
It's how you want to count it, really.
Yeah.
But my point is, it's the common divisor is still 12. It's just you're gonna have a stronger feel in 4 because of that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because every 2 patterns, you're gonna sense a lineup of the 4 rhythm.
Yeah.
And it's gonna take 2 patterns of 3 to hit quote half the 12.
Yeah.
So it's just a different way to look at it.
Yeah, it's something I'll have to like think about more. But what doing these weird rhythms has enabled me to do is make music in a way that I really find pleasing to listen to. Like, I didn't know this, but a lot of music that has that like 4 on the floor feel, the way they get you to stay like engaged with the sounds changing and stuff is to do that triplet feel. Like whether that be like a pickup in the hi-hat going back, or if it's like what else? Like on guitar, you might have like a dun like a triplet.
Well, okay, so here's a great example from yesterday when I was playing that syncopated groove on the and a 2. If you think about it, that's really just the second count if you're in 3.
Yeah. Yeah,
so,
exactly.
So that's why it was easy for me to just go like, oh, this would be an interesting rhythm.
I think that's something I didn't really understand. Maybe because I didn't come from the rhythm world, but I'm coming to using the tracker. I've learned a lot of like rhythmic stuff.
I think that's also the thing that you notice makes like a certain drummer stand out when they have more than just the ability to repeat a pattern. And this is where I'm weak, right? Like I have a pretty decent library of just like random drum patterns and things, and I can kind of like pull them out of a hat and combine them and do something reasonable. But I don't have the ability to just go like, oh, take those two rhythms and just smash them together. It's like, well, this would be the resulting thing or whatever it is. So there's a certain skill that goes beyond just like being able to regurgitate and copy something you learned. And the same is true of other instruments too, but that's like a way that I feel really lacking as a drummer, you know. It's like I don't have a command of the underlying rhythm itself. I just know what to grab that will fit, if that makes sense. So I operate more, I guess, like like Logic drummer or something, you know, like hope this works. Here's a pattern out of my book, you know. If not, we can try another one, but like I'm not going to be the kind of person to like hear what you're playing and my brain's automatically going to go like, "Oh, that's where all the accents were." Like I can copy you eventually. And like if I have a good bass player or something and I'm playing drums, like we'll start copying each other's groove. But it's not the level that you see people that have training in real time spent in their craft.
Right.
It's just so obvious when you see it. Like Tony's one of those guys.
Right.
Right? Because his craft goes beyond just, oh, here's a pattern that'll work. It's like, no, here's a pattern that's like carefully crafted to fill where you're not filling and also stay out of the way. It's like you got to know what you're doing to be able to think that way and apply your knowledge to your playing immediately like that. And it's a special
like
skill that you don't see in everybody. Yeah, it's a
you
very
break
high
the
skill
ceiling
cap.
and then you are like in this whole new stratosphere of like thinking about it.
And to be fair, that's probably the same kind of thing as like when you unlock like the theory behind, say, like the fretboard or like a piano.
Yeah.
You know, I imagine it probably feels similar. Like those people that are very good at that, maybe almost it probably isn't that impressive to them because it's so like natural and they feel it. It's kind of like how I feel probably when I sit down at a piano, but I feel like a fish out of water a lot of times behind a kit. If it turns out that the only thing I can come up with and pull out of the hat doesn't feel like it's working, it's like, well, where do you go from here? And I feel like that's the thing that theory lets you figure out with say like guitar playing, where it's like you could get kind of like stuck up against a wall, and theory will be the thing that goes, okay, there are some potential paths forward. Like let's see what that might be.
Yeah.
And again, I can't do that at a drum kit right now, and so that's an identified like weak point, I guess.
Yeah, I got your text about Sunday. And hey, bud.
Hi, doggy.
And you're right. It sounded really good. I listened to it on Sunday night just to kind of like I went through main parts and stuff. I wanted to hear what things sounded like.
Monday morning, I went back through and tagged everything out with timestamps.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
I try to do that if it's a session with other people, so it's
cool.
easy to skip to the meat of the session. Because, you know, I don't honestly, I'm just going to straight up say it. Like, I've done it before in the background or whatever, almost like a podcast or something, but I don't expect, you know, unless they're there and have nothing to do on Sunday and watch it or just want to watch through the full thing. I assume they're like me, where they go, these guys sat in here for 2 hours, you know, like kind of like this, you know, we call this Skylight Huddle. It's like, I'm just here and get to like see what happened or whatever piece of it I'm interested in. Like they don't know I'm watching them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because there's a lot of like when we do our Sunday stream, there's a lot of like different points of energy. Like there's points where we're just talking, there's points where we're like playing actually, and then there's points where we're playing an entire song.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. There's parts where it's like it's exposition, where we're just trying to show each other something. There's just what I would call like random jams, where we just kind of broke into something because it felt good. Other times, like you said, we're attempting to play through a full song. Other times, it's just banter. You know, we're just talking to each other and enjoying the company. So,
is it difficult to do all the timestamp stuff? Do you do that in the editor?
No, I don't do it in the editor. So right now, unfortunately, the only place I'm doing it is Facebook, but I think I could do this on YouTube too if I knew what their syntax was.
Yeah.
Basically, like, and maybe it just does it automatically. I'd have to try. But on Facebook, if you're looking at the video, right, and you go to comment on it, when you comment, it'll put above the comment what the timestamp in the video was at like when you left the comment.
Oh, right.
So that's nice. But it also does this automatic thing where if you put a valid timestamp at the front of your comment, so like if I start the comment with, 9:06, it'll turn that text in the front of my comment into a clickable link that when you click it, it'll jump the video to that spot.
Gotcha.
Right? So what I do is I just go through, and when I find the spots, I'll leave a comment and I'll type the timestamp that I know if you start right from there, you'll catch it all, kind of thing.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So I could probably, since they all have basically similar timestamps, I could probably do that for YouTube too, but I don't know if I have to like specially like go in there, like you said, with the editor and like mark the spots, or if I could just like post in the description like the same way I do on Facebook.
I'm gonna look into that.
So that would be cool. But I do that to try to make it so that, like I said, if you only have a couple minutes and you're just curious, well, what all do they do this Sunday? Like you kind of catch a quick recap, and that's kind of to take up for the fact that like we're not doing any post production or editing, right? So there's not like a highlight video going up on Monday or something,
right?
Which I mean that'd be cool shit, right? But I feel like just having the timestamp so you can quick scrub it, and you decide after you've heard that moment if you want to just keep listening and enjoy it. Great. If you want to go, okay, what was the next thing they did? Click the next one and
that's cool.
Listen to that. You know. And to be honest, I a lot of times don't tag like necessarily pieces of banter or anything. It's mostly just musical events. So like, for example, this last week I think it was only like 3 or 4 major events. It was like the initial playthrough of Sundered that we did, which is an accident because originally it was just going to be Katie playing it through to show us, and we just all jumped in and it sounded great.
Yeah.
And then we did San Fran, and then we played some random jams for a while. And then we ended up doing like a final playthrough of Sundered at the end. So it's like those are the major like musical kind of events that happen. So I tagged those.
I was really happy with the tone I got on the piano synth this time.
Boy, that's worth a mention, man. The unbelievable, like, I will say this, like, some of the stuff we've done with Nick has been very good, but I think some of the tweaks we've made since the last time we really got together with Nick have just totally paid off sonically. Like, I'm really pleased with the drum mix.
Yeah.
And what I'm noticing is the thing that I thought was weak before was actually kick drum, and I was worried that the shaping I did and putting it up in the mix was too much. It's so touchy, right?
Yeah.
And when you're not there to touch it, it's like if I'm gonna make an error, I'd rather err on the side of not too much, because too much kick can just ruin the mix.
Yeah.
So, but this last week it felt like kick was loud enough to be full and hit really well, but not like drown anything. And then like you made mention of this too during the session, but you're just the fill-in that synth provided for
it was like just
really everything, all the way from like bass register kind of thing all the way up to like where there were moments where like Katie would stop playing and it would be Zach. He wasn't playing the rhythm part. He was playing like leadish kind of shapes on it. But just the two of you even were enough fill that she could just sing vocals and it sounded great.
That was what the goal was, more or less.
So I think we kind of proved that like the songs are so good, really, that like just play them simple and enough is there. Like you still feel the same way, especially when the dynamics are right.
So I wondered if I didn't look into it too deeply, but I wonder if the microKORG has a key track option, which basically means if you're playing lower notes, the cutoff reacts differently, and the higher up you go, it gets brighter in the cutoff. So it'll like adjust in software, just basically, you know. Because the way I was using a bandpass filter, I believe. No, I couldn't have been. See, this is why I'm confused, because it sounded so bright in the top part, like pretty bright. I know I was using like 12 dB per octave.
I mean, a lot of it could be just whatever the shape of the waveform was initially. You know, it's just something that sounds very smooth and I'll just say round on the low end. Maybe just the pulse width kind of thing.
Well, the other thing,
shorter on the high end.
The other thing
and
too,
so it's gonna sound a little bit brighter.
I also made sure I put the resonance in the right spot, and that really made a difference too. It just brightens it up just a little bit, but it doesn't make it where it's like a bright synth.
I wonder how much effect that has on the low frequencies, like the bass tone, that resonance. Because man, it's just like I listened to it multiple times, and it's just like, this is so full. Like this.
I'm glad I saved it.
Oh man,
I used Zach's method of triple clicking the save button.
There you go.
I learned something Sunday.
But yeah, I was just so impressed that like listening back, I didn't have honestly what my usual feel is, especially when we're playing songs like that I'll just say, trying to think of the best way to describe this. We'll just say they're lower tempo and a bit more sparse in terms of arrangement and parts.
Yeah.
Right? You notice more when things are missing because it's like time goes by, like a measure of a whole note or something.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, like by the time that holding of that note was over, like some things just kind of weren't there anymore, you know? And having that synth just filling and just the chord changes at the right time and filling in that low end, it was just like nothing. When you listen to it, I mean, could the mix be a little better? Like probably, yeah. But the thing is, it's pleasant to listen to.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, and there's a critique on me too, because I guess, right, I'm directing the technical side of things. So if it's bad, it's my fault. But I only really am that impressed with maybe 3 sessions we've done all year in terms of like sonics.
Yeah.
And Sunday was one of them. There wasn't anything missing. When you listen to it, you're just like, I don't think I really could have done a whole lot different or better unless like I had more people or more whatever, or you know, the kind of things where you're like, yeah, if I was sitting behind the board, I would have, you know, when it felt like the vocal was getting lost, I would have pushed it up hotter and things like that.
I noticed that too. The vocal got lost.
That operator would do, you know, they're not a critique of like the setup.
No,
or the signal chain.
We were in the best
Zach
spot.
Sounded
we could have
the
been.
best he sounded.
Yeah.
Really, the trick there, I think, is the whole fake stereo thing we're doing for widening on a lot of other sources, and then the fact that guitars were like natively stereo.
Yeah.
And when I was playing with Evan a lot out at church, there was, when we first got things kind of reworked out there and redecided like what the snake channel kind of plot was going to look like. I mean, you know, I've done this stuff too, right? You're trying to decide like how many channels can we really afford to burn on any given thing. You know, we only have so many that head towards the board, you know, and there were a number of sources that we could have chosen to do stereo, but we chose stereo guitars over stereo keys and over stereo overheads on drums.
That's cool.
It's like, I really think it's kind of like that synth. It's like if you let the guitars be stereo, even when they're not playing much, if they're spaced out and have the right wet effects on them, they can just fill so much.
Yeah.
And that was definitely the case, I think, with guitars. Like everything sounded really nice. So, yeah, it was just a very, very pleasing session, in terms of just like, you know, just always the realization of there's a little more you can always do to make it better, but still that feeling of like, wow, like I believed it was possible, but like listening to session 1 again, it's like this sounds like I could hear this. Like this is an acceptable quality thing, whereas like at the beginning it was more like just enough that you could hear it.
Yeah.
So something matched what you saw.
Yeah.
And it turned into something where it is now, to the point where it's a fairly polished mix. And if there was an operator at it, it would be amazing.
Perfect. Yeah.
So
that's really cool.
It's a good feel.
You're leaving? Oh, have fun. Love you.
So yeah, that's kind of the feel for Sunday. And also, honestly, like you had mentioned it during the session as well, but like the fact that Zach was able to pick up so quick and cover those parts was awesome, because like you and I have had some, I would say you probably more than I have experience playing these songs and know the structure. Like you worked on those songs a lot with her, and like I've played them a couple times, you know, like we used to play them more often and stuff.
Do you remember when we like first started playing Sundered at my parents' house, like in the basement?
Yes, I do. Did you have a feel yesterday where you're like, this is really weird to see? Like,
I was thinking back. I think about this every time I play Sundered. When we first played that song, when I first interpreted what she was going for, she showed me that song on a guitar. And without any context to bass, I figured that she's going from the G chord to like a D chord with F sharp in the bass. You know. And
then to the C.
Yeah, then to the C.
Then to the F sharp minor, and then to the E.
Well, the E minor to the D.
Oh wait, you're right.
Because we're in G.
Because we're in G, you're right.
But here's something. A few years ago, when we were revisiting that song, because we've revisited it quite a bit of times.
Technically, this is our first revisit, like trying to play it with people, though, which is really fun.
Yeah.
It felt really good.
So what I learned a few years ago was it's not an F sharp she's going to. It's a B minor 7 chord. And that made the song so much better. It used to go G, D sharp, or G, F sharp.
D over G sharp instead of a B minor with the F sharp on top. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, it ended up being a B minor 7, like within what would that be, a A chord or an A? Sorry, not
it's
an
A on top.
An A on top. Anyway, when we figured that out, I was like, oh, that was what it's supposed to sound like. And ever since then, now every time I go to that B minor chord, I kind of laugh to myself because it sounds so much better than going to a D, F sharp. I didn't know that enough theory at the time when we were working on it the first time, and I'm so glad we made that change.
I still think it's so much proof, though, that like the writing's good, right? Because it's like that, like is important and like noticeable as that kind of a change is. Like it's still the same song, and that's so cool.
Yeah, definitely. The guitar, she was out of tune when she did the riff on San Fran, I noticed. But timing,
that was before you talking about yesterday?
Sunday, yeah.
Yeah, that was sorry. Wow. That's the kind of week, you guys, that that's partly because I didn't figure out how to switch the modes on my tuner until like later in the session.
It's hard.
And she was having a real hard time interpreting strobe tuning because I don't think she's ever probably used it before, and that is kind of a brain bender, I feel like.
Yeah.
Or I could understand how it is.
It can be, yeah.
For some reason, it makes more sense to me than any other kind, but I'm a weirdo, so I get it if that's not ever. Everyone approaches music and the thought about pitch and everything a different way. So
yeah.
I don't know, but that is something I should have identified quicker and fixed.
Well, what I wanted to say about that is, even though it was out of tune, it was on time. Like I felt like I remember when we first would try to record that, and it was difficult, to get it right. But she's so good at playing that part. Like you can tell she's really played so many times. And I was like, that's why I looked over at you. I don't know if you remember that, but I was like, I looked over at you and I gave you a look like, she sounds really,
like we're doing it.
Like she sounds like
great.
She's on. It was really cool.
Vocals were good too.
Yeah.
It was just a good session.
It was really fun.
So yeah, if you didn't catch it, go check out Vibe Unit. What is it, session 48?
Yeah, and we're on session 28 here, so I'm about 20 behind at the moment.
I think you'll pass.
I probably
point.
will, just because I will do a few extra ones here and there. So, but I mean, and then Vibe Unit obviously is once a week. So I hate when I do that, but at some point, yeah.
I can't. I'm not gonna be able to catch up. I'm starting something else too at the beginning of the year. Probably won't be able to catch up with you on that either, because that's gonna be a weekly release ordeal. And
is there any information about that right now, or?
I mean, there is. I guess if you're trying to get into it, but.
Well, I was just asking what it is all about, because I know we've touched on it, but is that something you want to start plugging now, or is it something you want to kind of wait on?
I don't know. I'm kind of waiting on it.
Okay.
But the basic idea of it is I'm gonna start working on, in the same way, and I'm not claiming to know it all by any means, but in the same way that when we started Vibe Unit, we had we'll just put it this way, I'll say enough skill to make it work, not maybe knowing all the potential pitfalls or the things that would have to get addressed, just being naive and being like, oh, this all ought to work.
Yeah.
And then you get into it and you're like, that actually doesn't work that well at all. So I'm expecting to run into some of that. But what I'm looking to do is start a channel, and I am still conflicted whether it's going to be a totally separate entity yet or not. I'm thinking yes, but maybe not. Don't know yet. The point is, it's going to be a more produced thing, so it's not something I'm going to do live. It's a thing that we'll just say it's going to be a little bit more scripted, and I have a little bit more of an idea of where it's headed in terms of what is the purpose of it, you know?
Yeah.
It's like towards a purpose instead of just being like, all right, we turn on at this time and turn off when we're done kind of thing.
So does that mean like record pre and then like edit some things and then release
I'll be
it? Okay.
recording segments. So the reason that it isn't started yet is because in the next couple of weeks here, I'll be recording the first segments, and then those will start, we'll just say airing. That's the bad term. I don't know what they call it now, premiering maybe.
That's awesome.
But I have to leave enough time to edit. We have access to a nice piece of tech. If any of you are in the video world, there's a neat Blackmagic is now making a version of the ATEM Mini switcher. They call it the ATEM Mini ISO, and what that means is if you hook up a fast enough piece of storage to it, like an SSD or something, it can record all of your camera inputs as separate videos. And that's cool because when you're on the switcher and you're making calls about what shot you want, it'll mark in the video clips like where you did the shot, and then at the end of it all, you get an actual DaVinci Resolve file that already has the camera cuts in it. So if you really want to, you can get real close that way and then just go back in and tweak if any of them are off. It's really cool. A big time saver. So if I get to a point where I have someone else doing this with me, I can probably save a lot of time because they can kind of guess at cuts at the start and then just have to do minimal tweaks and upload, you know, throw a bumper on the end and throw it up.
So what kind of content will be on there? Like, are you guys talking about anything and everything kind of thing? Or is it like, are you going to actually have, is it music related? Is it?
It's like production related, basically.
Oh, okay.
So it's going to encompass a bunch of different facets of things. It's basically going to be me digging into more specifics of like how I'm going about doing all the things I'm doing right now and trying to present it in such a way that if somebody else wanted to replicate what we're doing for their friends or something like that, I'm basically just going to lay it all out.
That's cool.
And then in the process of that, hoping that sparks more conversation from people, maybe asking questions or things like that lead into more content. But I mean, I have a lot of things that I could get into.
That's awesome.
that are interesting. And as things go farther along the road, it's not just, you know, like say like audio or broadcast I want to cover, but you know, even how am I doing you know, music production on a budget? How am I doing this? How am I doing that? How do you build a cheap light rig?
Yeah.
You know, how do you get into this stuff and start experiencing it and learning it without when there is no outlet? I mean, because the whole reason that we're doing this is because there isn't an outlet, and that was what spawned it all. So my thought is, if it's as important and useful and valuable to me or to someone else as it has been to me, then it's worth sharing like the ground level, like, well, how did we build it? And you can get a little bit of a feel for like some of the, I guess, physical changes that have happened over time. Like, you know what I mean? Like things like how we've decided to arrange our room, how we've routed audio, things like that. It's like, but you don't, only one of those two things is something you can see, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, you can see we moved everything out and painted the room, but like, you know, what have we learned over time? You know, recording things in a small space that isn't treated and everything else, you know, what. And it's all, if you could look at it this way, it's stuff you maybe could glean to a large part just if you watch through all the content, but I don't expect that of anybody.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to create that, almost that recap. Excuse me, not of, you know, hey, here's last week's recap, but more just the recap of like the project, if you will. And like, how did we get to a point where we decided, you know, this was going to work or that was going to work, or when did we decide this wasn't going to work and switch it out? You know, things like that, and maybe save people some of the hassle. Like here's a big one, right? Don't try to save money on cables.
Yeah.
Seems like a dumb kind of take until you've done it and you realize how much it sucks to be dealing with flaky cables all the time. It's such a like petty little thing, for example, to mention, but it's something that could save somebody a lot of time and hassle.
Yeah. Definitely.
And my whole point is it gives me a chance to dig into the details of that. So here's an example. Like if for example, and there will be a segment on this. It is actually on the list, but like what's the difference between a cheap cable and a good cable.
Yeah, and going at it matter of fact, like here's
Yeah, like I'm not here to just give you the information like, well, we don't use this, so you shouldn't. It's like,
Yeah.
no. Here's why it failed, and here's why this is what you run into, kind of thing. And because I find that kind of stuff interesting, and I also, it's actually interesting that the approach and the position that Zach is coming from, being interested in a lot of this stuff and not having been exposed to it or people who know anything about it. So I know there's people out there that are like, yeah, I don't know about that. And it's like, if somebody can stick it, like keep it on topic, like we're only talking about one thing right now. We're talking about cables. Why the fuck do cables matter? And am I the only person doing this? No. But
yeah,
it's something it's like a lot of other things. I feel like it's something I've wanted to do for a really long time. And just like Vibe Unit, I'm not going to let any more time go by where I'm like, 10 years from now, am I going to go, man, I should have just tried that. Like no guarantees it was going to be great, but like it's no reason not to. I have all the things to do it in place. So why not? So that's kind of the driver behind it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to just like dig a little bit deeper into the technicals, but have it be a little bit more like oriented towards someone who is at that like base or intermediate level. Like not get to the point where it's like, well, it's this many, millivolts, whatever. It's like, dude, no, like that's interesting to me. And there's people who are smarter than me that do that kind of content. But
Yeah.
I'm just trying to go after like the practical application. If you want to get started, build a practice space, be able to record your tracks, be able to, record it, stream it, whatever. Like there's so many moving parts and pieces that like I did a overview in session 42 where I talked about kind of like some of the pieces that are involved in what we're doing on a given Sunday. But even any of those pieces, there's very interesting details to dig into. It's like, yes, we're using OBS, for example, to do switching, but like what's really involved in that? Like how did that get set up? Or like graphics, like how are we generating graphics? Like how do you set up NDI? I mean, there's people that don't know. Like I remember when I was doing a lot of streaming, doing gaming related streams, using NDI pretty early. Like we're talking version probably 2 of the new tech tools. And I was using it because I didn't want to buy a capture card and deal with all that nonsense. So I was just using NDI to get basically the contents of one of my screens over to my stream rig and the output of one of my webcams. And it worked flawlessly. And I'm seeing all these streamers that are like having trouble like streaming and doing this on the same rig. A lot of like smaller, like medium streamers, guys that don't have the kind of budget to go like, yeah, I'll just buy 2 $10,000 PCs, where they're looking at it going like, yeah, but to have a separate PC with capture and all this stuff, and you're sitting here going, dude, like if you have an Ethernet cable and a second computer, as long as it's not a total trash computer, like you can just let it handle all that.
Mm-hmm.
And people would look at you like, dude, that's that's crazy. Like that's advanced. Like I can't figure that out. And it's like, come on, it isn't that hard. Like the amount of money that you could save is incredible, but you're choosing to settle and be like, nah, it can't be done until I can spend, $5,000 or whatever. And it's like, I don't like that kind of approach because there's always ways to get it done if you have something in mind you want to try to do.
Yeah.
And then the other cool thing is it might promote conversation with other folks about like maybe things they've tried that work. People give you tips or that kind of thing. I've run into that a lot with certain groups on social media, like Facebook groups that are related to say like production or tech. I mean, when you got 20,000 people, we don't have this sort of reach, but when you get to the point that you do, it's very interesting because, you might have some interesting thing you're just wondering about and you post something up about it and now you got responses coming from a bunch of people. It doesn't mean they're all right or they're all experts, but it's, it's like food for thought. A lot of the things we've done, even like at Vibe Unit in terms of like the workflow and how things operate have been the product of that. Like posting pictures and describing how certain things are set up and saying, this is the kind of like wall I'm running into, like any suggestions. It's like some people, they're going to give you suggestions that really aren't applicable to what you're doing. And that's fine. But other people, there might be that one nugget of somebody that's like, if I were you, I'd do whatever. And they go into detail and they leave you 3 paragraphs and you're like, I'll read that. it's like somebody took time out of their day to look at what I was doing that has a mind for it in some way and go, what about this?
Yeah.
It's like that's what I would want out of anybody if they're with me doing it anyway. So it's like it's really cool to kind of like have people come alongside with that kind of stuff.
And this content could generate more of that conversation and also give people shortcuts. So it sounds really cool, dude.
So yeah, we'll see where that goes. And then a piece of that, of course, will be I'll probably try to bring in various like pieces of things, and like I said, try to keep it like fairly focused and on topic, and keep them like short segments, man. I'm not trying to do like, hours and hours of content. I mean, I'm trying to put up like a 15-20 minute video that's concise and covers all the bases, and it's the kind of thing where you can rely on. If you've seen one, you know how they're all going to present the thing to you. It's going to be a different thing every time, but you can count on the presentation side of it. And that's why I'm going after a more produced and scripted approach, because that's the only way to be consistent in those ways.
I think that's a really cool idea. And there's so many things in our knowledge pool that we take for granted, and we forget people need to learn.
Well, or you forget how much time it took you to get a handle on it.
Yeah.
Like I think about that a lot, where it's like, yeah, there's things that I do now that, yeah, they are really easy because I know how to repeat the task and get it done or whatever. But there was a time when I was just flailing around and treading water, just like, I wish this would work. And it's like at some point, there's been cases where it only ever worked by accident, and then I had to reverse engineer, like, well, how did I get to here?
Yeah.
Because I literally am playing with toys I know nothing about. But then you work your way back, and you're like, okay, I see what's involved here. Like, why did that matter when I checked that box or did that thing?
Yeah.
And it's like, not everybody has the time or interest to dig that kind of deep. And I've always appreciated when I've run into people that can tell you that thing where it's like, I just banged my head against the wall for 6 hours, can't get the thing to work, gave up on it, post up my question, and somebody goes, well, why is, in your picture, whatever box isn't checked, why not? And you go, I don't know, I didn't know it was supposed to. And they go, well, it's checked on all the ones I've ever seen. And you're like, all right, I'll try it. And you try it and it works. It's like, okay, well, now I know every time I do this, I need to check that.
Yeah.
But I could still know that and not know why it matters.
Yeah, that's why I take a lot of notes for that same reason. I forget a lot of the knowledge I've gained, and I just recently went back and read my book from this year, my notebook.
Really?
Just to kind of acquaint myself with, like, my progress, because sometimes when you get low and you're feeling like, I'm not really making any progress, it's good to go back and just see all that stuff. In a way, it's a journal.
Well, it's funny because there aren't, I don't know, I guess if you think about it, there aren't, social media is a little bit of that, because a lot of people just kind of post up a bunch of stuff and you can kind of dig back, It's like I could look at myself and the kinds of things I was doing and posting, say 10 years ago and go, man, yeah, I'm definitely not that person at this point, And the same's true of like I said, like Vibe Unit Session 1, like,
yeah.
I'm not the same musician I was in that session, for better or worse. Like, things changed, for sure. And without that, I don't know really what metric there would be to even gauge that progress,
Yeah.
And you've made mention of that many times, like some of the reason you're doing this even, and some of the original conversations we had getting Vibe Unit started was about, look, even if this goes nowhere and it sucks and we have no idea what we're doing, like, we have all this stuff sitting around anyway, and we wanted to make the music anyway. So if nothing else, it's just
documentation.
Just here's a record of you did this on this date.
Well,
and it's turned into so much more than that. But the value of that like retrospect and that hindsight on it is maybe even more valuable than any of the other stuff, to be honest. Because like you said, when you're at a point where you're like, I don't think I'm not making any progress, or like I'm not really going anywhere. It's like when I can just pick, like, well, what was I doing a year ago? And you look at it and you go, oh Lord, like, okay, yeah, I made progress. And that's a good, like, reality check.
Yeah, I think that one thing I really appreciate about these Tuesdays for what we're doing right now, I like our debrief from Sunday. I kind of like that part of the Tuesday stream. Like, I'm glad that we always kind of talk about what we did, because that in itself is like a documentation of just like a reflection of that. You know, you have a couple days to sit on it, and then you have a conversation about it. It's like, yeah, that was a good day.
And it's oftentimes things you can't really quite evaluate in the moment either, you know, because you're so like immersed in it, man. It's like,
yeah, it's different.
Like I had a very different experience listening to Sundered this morning than I did yesterday. Or Sunday. And it gripped me then too, but my point is it was different when I wasn't busy doing anything.
You weren't
and I was
thinking about the drums, you were
fully immersed in like just taking in like what was it?
Yeah.
And like just the beauty of it. It's like I'm not playing an instrument, I'm not thinking about what's coming next or anything. I'm just listening to it, and that's it.
I was also, and this is apart from the music, but still about Vibe Unit, the switching was really good.
Oh man. I'm actually mad that Ashley left because I was going to mention that to her.
Yeah.
When I got here and got distracted by the dog.
Yeah,
he was being too cute.
That
dude.
tends to happen.
But yeah, the switching Sunday was just fantastic. I mean, right on time, right when you'd want it, tasteful. It just really got me super dug into this like rut where I was like shopping for cameras and shit, dude. This morning I was just like, dude, like she's on it. It's just like we just need better like sources to switch between. Like the problem isn't what's going on in video world. The problem is what's like in front of video world.
Yeah.
Which is
camera world.
Camera world. And yeah, I'm really starting to think like did you ever see that I think it was Andrew Masters did that video where he went and he went to where they filmed the JHS show. Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw like parts of it.
Have you seen like the walkthrough of like the space they do that in?
Yeah, and I was surprised at how different it feels in there than the video. You know what I mean?
But
what did you notice?
But well, that's kind of what I'm getting at, but that's like something I always expect. Like we do something weird, which is we're lazy and we just say, fuck it, here's 2 wide shots because I'm lazy and these are super wide cameras anyway, right?
Yeah.
But a better way to do it would be to put them at like head level for the subjects and set them, you know, in fixed positions, pointing in such a way that we've laid out the room and everything so that nothing's blocking sight lines. So you have these nice long shots where like the subject and the background are both in focus because the focal length is so long. Or if you want to use like a certain fixed lens, you know the distance away you are from the shot. So if you want to make sure the subject's always in focus and the background's always blown out, that's pretty easy to do.
Yeah.
Even if the background's not that far behind the subject. I mean, they're just photography tricks.
Yeah.
But those kinds of shots look so much more like, it's such a nebulous term, but I'll just say professional. Like, because that's, I guess, just what you expect to see. That's just what it is. That's just like the standard for professional, you know, multicam video production. So I'd like to get to a point, even if we stick with what we're doing now, which we probably will for a while, the whole GoPro method. You figure like Sunday was 4 people, right? Why couldn't I have a stand in the middle of the room? I get that it's not aesthetically pleasing, but again, if you go to an approach that isn't relying on these super wide shots all the time, put all the cameras like in the middle facing out and only pointing at one person each. You get what I'm saying? So it's like, then that gives her total flexibility to make a decision on where's the action, what does someone want to see.
That's a cool idea.
Because I feel like it's like, even if I got 2 more right now, where would I put them? Like, not going to put up any more wide shots, certainly. Yeah. So, I don't know. I'm very much thinking that the next move there, seeing what she was able to do with our limited inputs Sunday, it's like, okay, I need at least 2 more cameras, and they need to be, and this is something even to discuss with her, but like, where would you like them to be? Like, where do you think the shots would look the most like dramatic or whatever, you know what I mean? Because there's a feel even when as you decide like to move from shot to shot, if they're all set up a different way, like you can totally affect and influence like the way it feels like things maybe are intensifying in energy or going down, like you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's a crazy additional influence that you have making those decisions. But if you choose more artistic shots, you can do that. We have documentation shots, not artistic shots right now.
Yeah.
And that's what I realized. Like the next step for us is artistic camera work. So I'm pretty excited about that, actually. I think that's going to be a main focus this next year, is figuring out how do we get, because the audio, man, it's definitely down to the whole, is somebody behind it or not, or how much time do we take to like get it right before we started. The gear's fine, the workflow's fine, it's just operator or not kind of thing. Video has an operator. So like, let's focus there and see what we can come up with. I think that kind of approach would be a good jump, like just up to that next little notch where it's like, I'm not saying the production value's like perfect now, but like,
no, but it's
we're at least trying to do what's considered to be like best practice in the multicam approach, you know?
Yeah. I think that's a cool idea.
And to be honest, it's also probably useful whether or not anything ever gets done with it other than this for Ashley, obviously, but that's a skill set too, man. Some of the best technical directors out there, they're just innate ability to look at a screen full of a multicam and go, I need two right now. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the one that's just doing it for me. And someone who can call those shots is like sought after. I mean, there's dudes that are like worldwide names. Like, for example, Hamish Hamilton comes to mind. That dude knows how to direct a multicam show, probably better than anybody I've ever seen or heard do it. And there's a reason that he gets called for every major event there is that's relating to like a musical performance, because the guy just has this innate sense of like, the feel's moving this way. We need to make sure that feel is coming through on whatever's being, broadcast. And it's just amazing. But again, he's dealing with a situation where you have camera ops. So, there's actual people manning cameras that are, we'll say, all artists in their own way, where they're looking at what's going on in front of them and going, what thing in front of me is like most important right now? And they might be given some direction about it, like, hey, camera 4, you mostly just stay on the guitar players unless we tell you to grab a different shot. So in their head, they're going, like, what is there a moment going on in guitar right now? If there is, what's the best way I can present that? Knowing that they may not be the shot they're looking for at all, but if I can frame that shot, that the technical director is going to go, ooh, that's good, I want that.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to take that shot. So there's a really cool interaction that happens with those teams where, like, we don't have manned shots, but if we let her decide what are all the shots to start with, it's like, at least then you know what you have to work with when you go into that creative mindset of like, okay, how do I present the action in the room in a way that you can like feel that same energy watching it? And the audio does some of that, but the video does the rest, Yeah. So
wow.
That should be a really good
That sounds
good
like
direction, I think.
It sounds like there's room for growth, and you're got some ideas on how you want to do that. That's really awesome.
And we got room for, Liz, I look at it, we got room for 2 more cameras without really having to change anything else about the setup.
Wow.
So we might as well give it a shot.
I mean,
even if we're camera down, if
really
we have a pretty regular 4-person session, I think it'll work. So.
Well, with that, we're going to call it, but this was session 28. Skylight Huddle. I almost said Vibe Unit, but Skylight Huddle. This is Skylight Huddle.
Definitely. We're huddling right now, you guys.
Vibe Unit will be this Sunday again, as always. We're getting near the end of the year.
Close.
That's pretty cool.
Close. January 1 of this year was our first one, so really knocking on the door, like a week or 2 out.
I'm really looking forward to not having such long work hours soon. Exhausted, but we're gonna keep on keeping on, and I think what is it today? Is it the 7th of December? So that gives us,
I believe so. Yeah.
3 more weeks, and then it's the new year essentially.
Yep.
Crazy.
2022.
And this was all just thought up in 2020. Really? I mean, in a way. Remember how we were streaming just constantly during the pandemic, and we just would...
Yeah, it technically all started from like a teleconference call that we just pretty much left open for weeks on end.
And then we
because
realized...
we were everybody was in quarantine for the pandemic. Like, what was that? Like early mid 2020.
Yeah.
Right? Because it was like March, April time frame, I think, when we had the lockdowns.
Yeah.
So yeah, it started there. So I guess technically the pre-work was like maybe like a 6-month period before that, where we were like trying to figure out how to do video and record things and all that. So yeah, you're right. I don't think the idea was really even there before that.
No.
Other than the stuff I mentioned in that one video, like some of the early days, like high school and stuff, where we talked about having a place to play with friends and all that. But who doesn't have that conversation, right? I remember being 14 and being like, where can we go and just bang around drums and play instruments? It's like nowhere. No one wants to hear this.
Well, it's really cool we got the opportunity, and it's a blessing in that. So, all right. Well, thanks for tuning in, folks.
See you next week, everybody.
Yep, see you next week, and see you Sunday. Check out Vibe Unit.
What's up, buddy? You're a cute doggo. Yes, you are. Hi, buddy.